Alright, we are now officially in the fifth part of this series where Joan of Arc enters. And I know a bit about Joan of Arc, mainly that she's regarded as a savior of France, and, she gets burned at the stake. Other than that, also a saint, also, like, that's mainly it, but, like, it's gonna be cool to see specifically what she did to save France, because France is getting completely wrecked now again. So it needs some saving.
As Henry V sailed from Calais in late 1415, he left a deeply shocked France behind him. With the royal army destroyed, and much of the Armagnac faction leadership with it, the civil war appeared as though it was only going to get worse. Back in England, the jubilant king didn't bask in his success for long, and immediately began raising funds, mustering troops, and assembling a great navy for a follow-up attack on France, while at the same time depriving the divided enemy kingdom of its allies. Aiming to heal the Western Schism, Holy Roman Emperor Sigismund arrived in England in early 1416, but ended up forming an alliance with Henry and denouncing France instead. At sea, the king's commanders crushed the Franco-Genoese fleet in 1416 and 1417, leaving the channel open for another crossing. By the middle of that year, Henry had his army together and sailed to Normandy, this time going to conquer it entirely. On September 20th, the dominoes began to topple as Caen surrendered after a short siege. No relief was anywhere close because any royal force which might have assisted was busy facing off against the Burgundians. Next to fall was the great Norman capital at Rouen. Henry put France's second city to siege at the end of July 1418, and after a brutal siege lasting over half a year, its garrison finally surrendered. With that, almost every other castle in the duchy surrendered, and by the turn of the decade, Normandy was under English control for the first time in 2 centuries. This frighteningly quick conquest horrified both the Armagnacs and Burgundians. Despite the latter's covert talks with Henry V, they realized such a full conquest wouldn't benefit them at all. Realizing something had to be done, both John the Fearless and France's new Dauphin, the future Charles VII, agreed to negotiate. However, when the Duke of Burgundy knelt before his Valois prince, Armagnac retainers accompanying Charles suddenly came forward and hacked John the Fearless to death. Revenge for Louis of Orleans' death over a decade before. Whatever the motive, it was a disaster for France. As Francis I stated a century later when shown the mutilated skull of the dead Duke, "This is the hole through which the English entered France." Wide swaths of the kingdom burst into uproar or panic at
Dang, holy crap. Dude, France needs to get its act together. It has been, like, completely, this entire series has been France just getting one disaster after another. And Henry V is just owning things right now. Like, yo, Joan of Arc, we need you now. Like, you need to step up now.
the Armagnac's brutal murder of John. But when the news reached his son and heir, Philippe, in Flanders, he is said to have thrown himself on his bed, teeth grinding in grief and rage. Seething and eager for revenge, the new Duke of Burgundy formed an alliance with Henry V. The former would recognize the English king's claim to the throne of France, while the latter ensured Philippe's territories were enlarged and secure. This was the last straw. Battered by the English invasion and tired of civil war, the barely lucid Charles VI signed the Treaty of Troyes on May 21, 1420. Henry V would be heir and regent of France. He would marry the Mad King's daughter, Catherine of Valois, and their child would be king as well. After capturing a few more towns loyal to the Dauphin, Henry spent Christmas in Paris before going back to England and crowning Catherine his queen. While this was happening, Thomas, Duke of Clarence, was defeated and killed at Bourget during March 1421, a defeat which convinced Brittany to defect to the Dauphin's reduced kingdom. In October, however, Henry returned to France and took a few castles at Dreux, Vendôme and Beaugency before putting Meaux to siege. It was there that King Henry fell ill with his army, but insisted on staying with the troops, which he did until the city fell in May 1422. Though he returned to Paris, the king fell deeper into sickness and began to take measures for the succession, naming Humphrey, Duke of Gloucester, regent in England, while his brother, the Duke of Bedford, would lead in France in the name of the newborn Henry VI. England's great Lancastrian king, perhaps the greatest in the country's history, died at Vincennes on August 31st, 1422, at the age.
I feel like that's gonna, again, like I said, I don't know everything, but I feel like that's gonna be a turning point. Henry V was kind of unstoppable right there. He was just owning France, but I feel like, as we've seen before, when a great king falls, like, they need a really good successor, or else everything that they've gained will fall apart too. So I'm wondering if that's the turning point that the French need to really turn the tide, because look, it's like Britain's gonna basically take France.
Age of just 35. The mad king Charles VI finally died only 2 months later, and his son declared himself the king. Nevertheless, all of France north of the Loire came under Anglo-Burgundian rule, while his son only retained the loyalty of the south with a moving court. After an indecisive campaign of sieges, Bedford and his second-in-command Salisbury won a victory in 1424 at the Battle of Verneuil, widely seen as a second Agincourt, and this greatly increased the regent's prestige. Unfortunately, Gloucester's blundering meant that Bedford was forced to return to England for 2 years to put things straight, and only sailed back to France in March 1427. He and Salisbury now started planning a campaign to capture Orléans, the key to the Loire. If this great riverine linchpin was conquered, the English could easily launch further attacks to knock the Dauphin out for good. After capturing more than 40 towns and fortresses along the way, Salisbury approached Orléans in early October 1428, at the time garrisoned by 2,400 regular soldiers and a further 3,000 militia. A contingent of the English army under Suffolk captured both Jargeau and Châteauneuf to isolate the city, while Salisbury encamped opposite French defences on the southern end of Orléans' 350-metre-long bridge. He began an initial artillery bombardment on the 17th, and 4 days later ordered his men to storm the fortified gatehouse known as Les Tourelles. This attack was driven away by the defenders after each side took around 200 losses, with the Dauphinist French being constantly resupplied with food, drink and arms by the city's women. When the direct attack failed, Salisbury abandoned this approach and instead sent sappers to undermine the foundations. Realizing this was happening, the Guardians of Les Tourelles retreated deeper into the city on the night of October 23rd, destroying a small part of the bridge behind them. The fall of this fortification seemed like Orléans' doom, but as the aggressive Salisbury climbed atop Les Tourelles to decide where to attack next, a stray cannonball clattered through the window, killed one of his companions, and flung an iron bar at the Earl, slicing half his face off. Incapacitated and in agony, he was replaced by William, Earl of Suffolk, before dying a week later. The more cautious Suffolk decided on a prolonged siege, and in the next week, the English began constructing siege works. At about the same time, Orléans received some additional reinforcements from the southeast. The city was too large to be entirely cut off by such a small force. The city's defenders started bracing for an extended engagement, as well as burning and tearing down the suburbs outside the walls, depriving the English of cover and winter quarters by doing so. Starting on November 8th, English boats began ferrying men across the Loire and constructing siege positions to the north and west of the city. The French responded with a few unsuccessful sorties, and to compound these failures, by the turn of December, the besiegers had been reinforced. While the northern bank siege works were being constructed, the English launched a failed probing assault across the broken Loire Bridge. the defenders responded with massive 26-pound shots from a new bombard, and by completing the levelling of their suburbs. As 1429 began, Orleans' would-be captors shifted focus to the now fortified north bank, with a number of easily repelled assaults on the Porte Renard in January. The loose nature of the encirclement also allowed a supply convoy, including hundreds of sheep and pigs, to reach the city. As gallant resistance continued, 200 men of the garrison slipped out of Orléans and joined a 3,000-strong French force at Blois. Having received reports of an enemy supply caravan approaching from Paris to resupply the besiegers, they marched to intercept near Rouvray. However, when the French and Scots under Clermont found the 1,500-strong caravan on February 12th, their assault over the open country was repulsed and counterattacked from behind a ring of supply wagons. 400 of the Dauphin's troops, mainly Scots, were killed, and Clermont subsequently withdrew to Tours along with a number of other commanders certain of defeat. At Chinon, Charles was so demoralized by the grand city's seemingly inevitable fall that he considered abandoning his kingdom completely. However, events many hundreds of miles to the east were about to thoroughly rejuvenate the French cause. 3 years before, a 15-year-old girl named Joan began hearing voices, and by 1428 became convinced she was being granted a task from God, delivered by the Archangel Michael in addition to Saints Margaret and Catherine. Her task? To lead an army against the English so that Orléans might be relieved, and to have the Dauphin traditionally crowned.
Yeah, I forgot about the vision, that this was a divine vision that she said she had, and that it spurred her to fight. Holy crap. This is like... Yeah, France needs it all. They are in their bleakest hour of the war right now.
As Charles VII in Rheims Cathedral, where Louis the Pious had succeeded to the Frankish throne 6 centuries earlier. Through aid from Robert de Baudricourt, a pro-Valois commander in Vaucouleurs, Joan undertook a dangerous journey to Chinon and then to Poitiers, where her faith was declared true and her virginity assured. To test whether this woman's extraordinary claims were true, she would be sent to Orléans in an attempt to break the siege. After being granted armor, horses, a special banner, and supposedly finding a legendary sword, she went to Blois and joined a gathering relief force. Upon her arrival...
This feels like a fantasy novel right now. It's like, character receives a divine vision, gets a supposedly legendary sword, is the last hope, everyone, even the king, is believing her. It's like, oh my goodness, this feels like a random fantasy book that just took place right now. And like, wow, and she was so young too when she did all this. Like, that's just beyond impressive.
The deflated mood among French soldiers and officers immediately began changing at her holy presence. Leaders who had withdrawn from the siege previously, such as Clermont, or who had avoided getting involved at all, now rallied to the cause, inspired by Joan's patriotic mission. While the Dauphin's army mustered, the lull at Orléans, following Rouvray, allowed English forces, who were aware that a relief attempt was incoming, to construct a number of formidable fortifications: the Bastille de Saint-Loup to the east, the Boulevard de la Pressoire on April 9th, the Bastille Saint-Puer on the 15th, and Bastille de Saint-Jean-le-Blanc 5 days later. Notably, the new English commander, Glasdale, created an external earthen rampart outside Les Tourelles, making it into a citadel. Joan and her relief force set out for Orléans on the 26th, and after a miraculous crossing of the Loire at Chessy, and by...
You know, I never commented on some of the visuals that Kings and Generals use. I think he's using Total War. Like, I know we've seen so many videos and I have yet to comment on this, but like, I'm pretty sure he's using like Total War mods for some of this stuff. It's kind of funny to just see it for the first time ever, like a female modded leader like this. I don't know. Like from all these videos, we have yet to see this, like a woman leading battle. So this is like a first time on this channel. And yeah, I can't wait to see what she does.
Bypassing Saint-Loup without opposition, entered the city through its Burgundian gate 3 days after leaving Blois. After resting for the night, Joan was eager to go on the attack. Because one wasn't planned for that day, she walked across the Loire bridge to the Bellecour stronghold and asked the English to lift the siege. Glasdale shouted back that she was a mere cowherd and they would burn her if she was captured. Nevertheless, Joan's threat to kill all prisoners their forces had taken if her heralds were not released worked, and they were indeed set free. Also on that day, a lengthy skirmish was fought when the French commander La Hire sortied out against the northern English fortification at Saint-Peuer, but was eventually forced back inside. This inability led the overall defending leader, Jean de Dunois, the bastard of Orléans, to slip out of the city on May 1st and return to Blois, where he sought reinforcements. While he was gone, Joan didn't remain inactive. She rejuvenated the morale of Orléans' long-besieged citizens, who crowded to meet her and give their maid gifts, while also performing military reconnaissance against Glasdale's positions to see which were weak and which were strong. Dunois returned on May 4th with much-needed reinforcements, and shortly after, an attack began spontaneously on England's eastern fort at Saint-Loup by 1,500 troops. Joan was resting at the time, but when informed, either by an angel's voice or any of the other mortal voices in the city, rode out as swiftly and eagerly as possible to join the attack. For 3 grueling hours, Joan inspired her warriors to fight. Despite fierce resistance by the English garrison, the French soldiers managed to finally capture and raze Saint-Loup to the joy of Orléans' people. Despite her jubilation at the victory, Joan of Arc wept for the 140 slain English soldiers who had died without confession.
Yeah, their eternal damned souls are now in hell. Sorry, I'm just joking around, but like, yeah, Joan of Arc is such an interesting person, I think. And this whole, you know, like I said, we haven't seen a woman lead in military operations ever on this channel. At least I can't remember. So this has just been, like, this is just unique to me. And, like, how she's raising the morale of everyone. Like, it almost is, like, divine in a sense, right? Like, I mean, I'm a religious person myself. I believe in God and Jesus. So, you know, this is just very interesting for me to see.
Still, the officers remained cautious, but this was shattered when news came from Paris of a large incoming Anglo-Burgundian relief army, led by John Falstaff. It was now clear that the siege had to be broken before it got to Orléans, or all their bravery would be for nothing. On the 5th, French forces crossed the Loire in order to attack Saint-Jean-le-Blanc, an earthen fortification protecting Les Tourelles, but when the English withdrew to the gatehouse itself, the defenders managed to occupy the outlying position. The next day, Joan crossed the Loire again, pushing the troops forward against the Bastille des Augustins. After a ferocious clash in which the French had to use a cannon to take down a particularly big Englishman, they overran the fortress. Glasdale's remaining troops retreated behind the boulevard protecting Les Tourelles. With divine favour seemingly on their side and momentum at their back, the French attacked Les Tourelles' outer defences on the...
Dang, this has been just really great to watch. They essentially just moved around and just caught them completely unawares. Kind of a flank, if you would. The oldest trick in the book, but... I'm sorry. But, point is, yeah, this is just... Yeah, it almost does seem like divine favor. It's like God wants them to win. Because even God's watching France get, like, pulverized, and he's like, let me help. I need to step in and help the French now. They won't be able to do it. So, okay, I'm just joking, I'm sorry. But, yeah. Wow, this has just been really good. We know Joan of Arc eventually does get like burned, so I'm like wondering like it when things turn around, because so far everything is just going pretty great.
7th by Escalade, but were repelled at first with heavy losses. During the fighting, Joan herself was even struck between the shoulder and neck by an English arrow, but fought on nonetheless. After going off to pray in a nearby vineyard for guidance, Joan of Arc returned with her banner in hand, motivating the French to a final attack in which they managed to drive the besiegers from the fortification in front of the Les Tourelles gate. The Maid of Orleans called on Glasdale to surrender, but he refused. When he subsequently attempted to
You underestimate my male power. So, like, dang, Joan's a kind of a beast. Like I said, like, it's so cool to just see, like, a woman in battle now. Like, we don't see this often, so it's really cool to just see a woman in battle, taking charge, leading, like what, I guess the term used, girl boss nowadays. A girl boss, an actual girl boss, though. Like, man, she's running on, like, divine favor right now. Like, God is, like, really, like, boosting all her stats right now. You know?
To lead his remaining troops across the drawbridge and to the gatehouse, the timber cracked under the weight
I love the Star Wars references.
of so many soldiers and dropped many into the Loire. Glasdale himself, clad in heavy armor along with many of his men, drowned. Morale inside the inner fortress crumbled after this loss, and the surviving English inside quickly surrendered. On the northern Loire bank, the remaining English troops abandoned their siege lines and formed up in two large battle formations, challenging the French to open battle. When Joan and the other commanders lined up in front of them and
Okay, open battle now. Okay, this is what worries me. Okay, so far the British have the English, I'm sorry, but like, you know, point is, they have been unstoppable in pitched battles. Okay, Joan, you're definitely doing great in the siege, but I think this is the issue. This is where I see things turning around, perhaps, maybe. I could be completely wrong, and the English might just get wrecked here, but, like, I don't know, man. You never seem to defeat the longbows, and now in battle, it's like, eesh. I could see things turning now for the English, so I don't know, I guess we'll find out.
prepared for battle, however, the besiegers lost their nerve and turned to march away. Their army split, one group moving to garrison Jargeau, while another went to Man Mung, all the way being harried by French troops who disobeyed orders to ride them down. After 210 days, the siege of Orléans was over. The Dauphin's loyal, capable army had held firm, and Joan of Arc was enshrined forever in history as the Maid of Orléans. Joan pushed for an immediate advance to crown Charles, but the French commanders claimed that with the English still holding castles on the Loire, they weren't yet in a position to do that.
Yeah, Joan of Arc, man, she carried right there, dude. Like, that is beyond impressive. That's an impressive, like, outing. Like, a really young person, you know, a woman who, especially at this time, right, like in human history, like, women don't belong in the battlefield. At least I think that's how was the general thing. At least that seems to be the general thing in most of human history. Men do the warring, right? Like, women don't often participate in war, so it's just weird to see her basically become like the hero of the French, and it's just a unique circumstance from a very young person, you know, and that's just like amazing. That was just amazing. Like, she handled that amazingly, you know.
So in mid-June, the army, with an enthusiastic Joan of Arc in tow, began retaking them one by one. Jargeau fell on the 12th, Beaugency on the eve of the 17th, and then finally Meung at dawn on the 18th. The remaining English forces retreated north and united with Talbot's southward marching relief army, bringing their strength up to around 5,000. Hotly pursued by Joan and the 6,000 French troops, the English field army was decisively defeated in the Battle of Patay, dispelling the myth of invincibility of England's armies in the field for good. Such a great victory in the open field finally encouraged the Dauphin to accompany Joan of Arc and his newly enlarged 12,000-strong army in a march towards Reims. There on July 17, 1429, the long-beleaguered son of Charles the Mad was crowned as Charles VII in the city's grand cathedral as the Maid of Orleans stood at his side, holy banner in hand. This was militarily insignificant, but a propaganda triumph. As the Burgundian supporter Enguerrand de Montrellet stated soon after this seminal moment, the French now believed that God was against the English. The story of Joan of Arc and
rising the... I didn't think about that, but yeah, like the religious perspective and ramifications of this, because here a woman is, receiving divine visions, like a mission from like God himself. She goes out and pulls off great victories against the English, not only in siege but in open field where others couldn't. Like, yeah, how do you not think God's definitely, especially at this time in history where I imagine more people were religious than nowadays, like, that's just a sign. And now it's like rejuvenated. This has become like a holy war now, and we see just how religion can motivate people, especially in like resistance or battle. And yeah, now it's become, okay, God wants us to win. God does not like the English. Dude, Joan of Arc, man, completely flipped the entire war on its head. That is amazing. That's an actual girl boss. Take notes, Hollywood.
And the continued French resurgence will continue, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see the next video in the series. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely.
Yo, okay, I need to watch the next part. We are almost there, guys. We have next part and then the end. I've been watching this all in one go, so let's just get to it. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye, everyone.